Operating at an extraordinary level can seem challenging. Learn how to survive in the lone wolf economy in the OG Money podcast with Lonnie Ogulnick. Drawing on over 20 years of experience in the trenches of Wall Street, Lonnie explores what it takes to be successful in today's rapidly changing environment. From daily routines, wealth strategies, and sustaining the highest levels of wisdom, Lonnie and his guests unpack proven ways to live an extraordinary life.
Welcome to the OG Money Podcast. We have an absolute beast here today. Caryn Lubetsky, ultra distance runner. From managing a home of 3 boys to the Badwater 135-mile race in California's Death Valley. What in God's green earth goes through your brain? My knee falls apart after mile 3 around my neighborhood. Before we dig into that, though, I'd like to rewind a bit. I believe in clues, and you can get a little bit about a person if you start at the beginning. So we're going to go backwards. And I'd like to know, where does this passion, this endurance come from? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, your background, and let's start from there.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. So I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up in the suburbs where everybody played a sport or participated in some sort of community activity, and I was a swimmer. And I very quickly found that it was something that I was good at and that I enjoyed, even from a very young age. And so I started progressing through the swimming world and swam at a very high level at a very young age. So I learned my discipline there. By the time I was in late elementary, early middle school, I was swimming 4 or 5 hours a day. Training was my life. My team was my social experience. Traveling with my team was how I spent my weekends. So I think that I learned my athletic discipline there, and it just sort of became a way of life and a part of life for me at an early age.
At 13, 14, 15 years old, what happens there?
So that's a very interesting story for me as an athlete. 13 years old, I was very serious, very focused, had my eye on the ultimate prize and competing for the United States and being in an Olympic cycle and things of that nature. That's sort of where my head was and my goal was. 14 comes around, and I had a very bad skiing accident, and I blew out my entire left ankle. And that was the first time while I was recovering that I was actually like in school first time, in social settings in school the first time. And I discovered that there were other boys than the ones that I had known since I was 6 on the swim team, and that there were other types of parties and social things going on. That was a new world for me at that age. I became very sort of engrossed in it and distracted by it. And when my leg was better, I had a hard time going back. And I think that as an athlete, that discipline that you have was incredible because it carried over into things like schoolwork and organizing my life. But it was very hard at that young age, where your brain is, to get back into the discipline of having to work harder than you did before to get to a place that's below where you were before, if that makes sense. So I struggled with that for sure. As an adolescent and going through all of those things all at once, my parents were getting divorced at that same time. So that was a really difficult time for me. I sort of turned my back on it for a while. And so that was sort of the rest of middle school. When I got into high school, I started swimming again. I was very good for a high school swimmer or a local swimmer, but I was no longer very good for that next level elite swimmer where I was before my accident and before my time off and before all of the other things in my life that were great that I discovered, like the social aspects, or difficult, like the divorce. And I sort of just went through high school swimming and just having it as a high school sport, not something bigger. I made a decision to go to college and not really think about swimming and have that whole other life. So I went to college and didn't swim at all. Definitely worked out every day. And that part, it just becomes a part of you, like waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth and showering. That whole having to work out and having that athletic discipline stays with you your whole life when it's ingrained in you. I started swimming competitively when I was 6. So that was still there, but it was more just, working out and doing it for me and for whatever social aspects working out had, and, being in college and hanging out at the gym and all that kind of stuff. Went right from college to law school. Practiced law, was in like the crazy world of being a young professional and not having any time for anything else. Still worked out every day. And that was still, no matter what, if I had to wake up at 5 a.m., if I had to do it right after work, whatever it was, always fit it in. And it was my time for me. And it was always that my time for me. I was doing a lot of amazing things professionally and enjoying it. And then I got married, and then I had a kid, and then I had a kid, and then I had a kid. And I had 3 kids in 4 years. That became very all-encompassing and, amazing, the best thing in my life, but very all-encompassing. And I kind of lost sight of everything else in my life. Like, I was just a mom, right? And for me, that was the greatest thing that there could be. And there was nothing else in this world that I wanted to be. And I wanted to be in that moment of being a mom every single second. Loved every minute of it. And if I could go back in time and have my babies, and I would. But that being said, once my kids started to get a little bit older, and once they were in school full day and everything, I took a step back and I was like, whoa. And that happened right as I was turning 40. So it was this like weird conflux of like, oh my gosh, my kids are now in school all day. I had, taken a big step back from practicing law. I wasn't competing in anything athletically at all for a long time. And I just had this sort of, I need something for me moment. Now what am I going to do while my kids are in school all day that makes me a better person? When I was swimming, when you got in trouble, when you goofed off, when you had to run. That was your punishment. And I hated every minute of running. And I grew up, it was such a punishment. And I decided I was turning 40, and the Miami Marathon was like a few weeks before my 40th birthday. And I was like, I'm going to run the marathon just to prove to myself that I can do it. Just to sort of go out there and show myself that my body can still do something. And I went and I did it. And it was like the greatest rush ever. That whole competition and being a part of something bigger and challenging myself for me, because running and swimming are very similar in that you can be on a team, and it is a team sport in a way, but it's all about being the best that you can be that day and having to rely on yourself and what's inside of you that day. I loved it, and I was hooked from the minute the gun went off at the start line. And now it's 9 years later.
Mind-boggling story here. I just want to address an issue. You're 6 years old and you're getting put back into swimming, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of influence your parents had on you? Were they athletes? What made them want you to be such an elite athlete?
So my parents never pushed me, but they always supported me. And I think there's a big difference, because I did love it. And I don't think, even looking back, knowing that was sort of my whole life for, say, 8 years, I don't have any regrets. I think my parents saw that I was good at something. We started out at the local Y and just having swimming lessons. And then the swimming lessons progressed into, hey, she has maybe some talent here. Let's put her on the swim team. And being on the swim team and developing it. So my parents never pushed me or forced me, but they were my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest supporters. So it was like, every single swim meet, they're there. Then it turns into not just a swim meet locally, it becomes regionally, it becomes, traveling and all of that. And so they were all just sort of all in for me, but never forcing it. I really do look back on it, and it was what I wanted. But it would only happen if you had that really intense support from your family.
You have 3 boys, of which I believe all of them are into running.
They are.
I know Brady is a nationally ranked runner at this point.
He is.
What is his ranking?
So last year he was ranked number 7 in the country for his age group in the 5K distance. He's at 11 years old. He was running an 18-minute 5K.
And where does your influence, is that these kids just watching their mom and that's, something they see and then they want to be like, or were you an influence pushing them in that direction? How did that happen?
I think that some of it happens organically and some of it happens because it's what they see me doing. So, for example, when I started racing outside of Florida and traveling, my kids were still relatively young. I would take them to races with me. They, would come to Boston with me and watch the Boston Marathon and things like that. So it was something that was ever present in their life. And when something's ever present in your life, you sort of, get involved in it. They knew what the running world was. They took their own interests, but I definitely pushed it. I would say like, hey, who wants to go for a run with me? Let's go out and run. Let's go out and, get some exercise. Who wants to run? And so it sort of builds that way organically just for spending time, but there is definitely a little bit of a push. And I think secondly, I am one of the cross-country coaches at Country Day. So when the kids were too young to be able to run on that team, because I was the coach, they would come to meets and cheer their team on. It was their school. And so they saw that, it was exciting to be a part of a team and things like that. And they wanted to be a part of that and got involved in that. And that's where they all started really competing. When they were younger and not able to compete yet for Country Day, I would take them to 5Ks with me and they would run them. And they were running 5Ks, at 6, 7, 8. And we would always do it. We would pick charity 5Ks. So there would be a component of sort of giving back to the community and getting them involved. So just getting them involved. And I think that they all sort of enjoyed that race day excitement. It became an activity and something fun that we did as a family.
I'm going back to my childhood. I was a wrestler. I was a pretty rambunctious little kid. I remember myself, I don't know why. Later on, I think I might have had athletic-induced asthma, but that's something when I was older. But do you think that it's nature versus nurture, or is it both? Like, is Brady born with this extraordinary gift because you had this gift, or is it something that's trained? And as long as you keep training and pushing and pushing and pushing, you're going to get to the goals, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both for sure. So Brady's body type and his natural ability takes him there. He doesn't have to work that hard at it, to be honest. My oldest son, Davis, he has a completely different body type and he has to work 10 times harder to get himself there. Merritt is somewhere in the middle because he has crazy long legs and the most beautiful stride, but he doesn't love it as much as everybody else, so he doesn't push himself as hard. So Merritt has that natural talent that he doesn't push as much. It's not his thing. Lacrosse is more of his thing, and he really excels there. Brady is like a gazelle. He just glides. Like watching him run is the most beautiful thing. I wish I could run like that. I can't. And Davis is built differently, and Davis runs like I do. He has speed, but not that crazy speed, but he can go forever. He ran his first marathon at 12 years old. So I think it's a little bit of everything combined, but there's definitely a natural talent component to some of it. There's no question.
Right. It's always interesting to me to understand, where do these high octane athletes come, is it nurture or nature? So the last time we had spoken, I know you set a world record. You're in the Guinness Book of World Records for a marathon pushing a paraplegic. Why don't you get into that story a little bit and how you got involved in that?
Now we hold 2 world records and we have a 3rd pending, so that's super exciting. In 2013, I ran the Boston Marathon. That was my first Boston, and that was also the year of the bombings. Running the Boston Marathon for a marathoner who's not, hitting the at Olympic level, that's the pinnacle, right? That's the ultimate, is the Boston Marathon. So there was so much emotion and excitement, and I'm at my first Boston, and I cross the finish line, and I just get reunited with my family, and they're all there cheering and excitement, and the bombs go off. And in the aftermath of that, and what happened is sort of a whole nother story in and of itself, but it changed me, and it changed my family. It sort of just became a part of the fabric of who we are. And I came back from that experience knowing that if I was going to keep running and keep competing, that it had to be something more. It had to not just be about how fast can I run. It was sort of like that blew up in the bombs for me, right? It just needed something deeper and bigger. Obviously, we spoke about my swimming. At that point, I had already started training with a team. I started running in local races, and a couple coaches started reaching out to me after I started doing well. They heard about my background. They're like, you have to be a triathlete. You swim. Like, most triathletes struggle with the swim. That's the hardest part for them. You've got to be a triathlete. So I got really into triathlon. That, by the way, was the first time I had really, other than just for swimming with friends and enjoyment, the first time I ever swam a lap again. From when I was in high school to now, I'm like 42 years old. All of that time passes. But the swimming came right back naturally, not an issue. So after Boston, my friends know what I'm going through, and they know that I'm looking for some sort of like deeper meaning in life. A friend's husband was at a board meeting for a charity that works to put disabled people back on the water. And at that meeting, there was a woman named Carrie Grusin, who is a quadriplegic, who said that she was looking for someone to pull her in an open water swim called the Swim to Alligator Lighthouse. And it's a 9-mile open water swim. And my friend's husband was like, you know what? I think I know somebody. I think I can put you in touch with somebody. Carrie and I met, and she changed my life. She is a Harvard-educated journalist who was in Hawaii. She is now 73 years old. She was 27 at the time. She was in Hawaii at age 27 interviewing a Green Beret. He was a Vietnam vet. He was in Hawaii. It was his first stop back in the States after being in Vietnam, and he had been a POW. And she was interviewing him as a journalist about his experience in Vietnam and as a POW, and he had a flashback. And he jumped across the table, and he snapped her neck, and he left her for dead. He thought that she was the Viet Cong. And he ran and hid, thinking that his life was in danger. So meeting Carrie and just her sharing her story immediately is obviously empowering and life-changing. But more than the story, it's that she has complete forgiveness. What she says is that they were both victims of the war. And she holds no anger and no malice. And I had been walking around at this point for like 9 months with such anger about Boston and how two people can come in and wreak such havoc and change people's lives and instill fear and really take innocence from my children and all of this. And she let me release my fear just by having conversations with her. So she and I instantly bonded. She's my family now. Since then, we have, like I said, set world records together. We've traveled the world together, racing all over. We've completed Ironmans together. We've completed 4-day, 400-mile marathon triathlons together. By the way, we did this from Alligator Lighthouse, and it was an incredible experience. We set the world record last year in New York for the fastest marathon, pushing another person at the New York Marathon last year. But more importantly than that, we've started a program where we work with young children to change perceptions of ability. She came to me when I was looking for something and needing something. And I think that people just come in and out of your lives at certain times for certain reasons.
What did you start with her? What is that?
So it's a program called Race to Educate. And Race to Educate is a program whose flagship event is at Miami Country Day School with the 4th grade triathlon. And it has become incorporated into the curriculum. Unfortunately, right now with COVID, this year's on hold, but we have done it for 3 years where we meet with the 4th grade early in the year. And the first day that we see them, we always sit down, and it's Carrie in her wheelchair sitting next to me, and we say, who knows what an Ironman is? And a few kids raise their hands. And then we tell them what an Ironman is. It's a swim, a bike, and a run. We say, who do you up here think has done an Ironman? And they all point at me, and we say, nope, don't ever judge a book by its cover. It's both of us. And then we have meetings with them. It's usually about every other week. And we talk about how asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And that Carrie could never accomplish anything in life without asking for help. And how she feels it's a gift to somebody else to ask them to help you. And how I've learned that that truly is a gift and didn't even understand that when I met her. And we talk about how you look at somebody and they look like their life is so easy and perfect. But through triathlon, we can show them there's 3 different disciplines. Everybody struggles at one discipline, right? Put me in a triathlon, I'm going to kill the swim and I'm going to kill the run, but don't even watch me on the bike. It's not pretty, right? So everybody struggles in some arena in their life. And that through this triathlon, everybody can see that in one discipline, every child needs a little help. So the child who was doing well with the swim helped their friend who wasn't. And then that friend in turn maybe helped them with the bike because they were struggling. And so it's this metaphor for life where everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. When you come together, even if you look so dissimilar on the outside, that on the inside, we're all the same and that we all have something to share and give. And then the program culminates with an entire triathlon actually staged on the campus with the kids coming together, helping each other, cheering each other on, and getting each other through it.
Yeah, I got 2 kids that went through the program. It was amazing for both of them. You know, what pops in my mind is a quote that I often live by, and I'll pop up on social media every now and then just as a reminder, is that everybody's struggling with something. So be kind.
No question.
You have no idea what people are going through. It may look good on the outside. It may look good in pictures. But inside, everybody has something that they're fighting.
Every single person.
Yeah. So what blows my mind more than anything about you, and that draws me, I'm sure, a lot of people towards you, is you're not just a ultra marathoner, triathlete. You're the president of the PA for Miami Country Day. You do these side projects. The list goes on and on and on. Professor, lawyer. So where do you fit the time, for yourself? I know you have a social life as well. Where does just the time for you, or is that when you're training? And tell me what training is like. Let's get to the bad water real quickly here.
Okay.
What is it like with everything I just said, and you have to train for the bad water, which is a 135-mile race, 135 miles. I struggle with a mile. Okay, let's just get that on the facts here. What's that like? Tell me.
Okay, so just so you know, it's the funniest thing. When I talk about racing Badwater and running 135 miles in 125-degree heat with 20,000 feet of climbing, it sounds crazy to me too, right? I'm like, how does that happen? But when you're in it, you're in it. So how do I handle it all? I mean, I think that first and foremost, just having priorities. And so my family is always my priority. So if I have to wake up at 4 a.m. and go do my run at 4 a.m, that's what I have to do. Sleep is definitely the thing that sort of falls by the wayside the most. And I have learned to be able to operate on very little sleep. And that's helped me a lot.
That's got to be genetics too, because most people can't.
Yeah, you know what? I think it really is. And through the pandemic, I've gotten more sleep than I've ever gotten. But sometimes I feel like I'm more tired.
Right.
So there is definitely a genetic component. My sweet spot is 6 hours of sleep.
7 here.
Right? If I get more, I tend to be groggy and things like that. So, I can go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and wake up at 4 a.m.
Right.
And I can go for 3 or 4 days at a time with 4 hours of sleep and then, catch up on a day. And so my body operates well like that. So I'm lucky like that. Waking up early and being organized and making lots of lists and multitasking. So it is very common for me to be out on a 20 or 30 mile run and put my AirPods in and return phone calls and be like, hi, this is, and I'm running, whatever. This is Caryn, the Parents Association president. I have a message from you. What's going on? How can I help? So I definitely multitask, and that helps a great deal. I found that when I'm in a meeting, which I'm in lots of meetings, whether it's for the Childhood Cancer Project or for Miami Country Day School, when I'm in a meeting and they say, okay, Caryn, you have blah, 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 3 things to do, I take out my phone and I'm doing it right then and there. Like, I don't say, okay, this is what I'm going to do after. Like, if they say, Caryn, can you reach out to somebody and ask them this? I'm emailing them right there in that meeting. I am just really trying to be efficient and maximize my time. I find that the days that I might have a day off from training and I lay around and I think, I'm going to have like an extra 4 hours that day, I get nothing done. The busier I am, the more organized I am, and the more I get done.
Do you have an assistant?
I do not. I have 3 kids who help a lot, and I have an amazingly supportive husband,
right.
But I do not have an assistant at all. That would be nice.
Okay, so here we are. Last time we spoke for the book, The Heart of a Beast, you had mentioned to me, I said, what's next? After that interview, I started running for a little bit. I promised I'd do the Miami Marathon, half marathon.
I still remember.
I will do the next one. I'll try. So I will tell you, though, that you had mentioned to me your goal was to get to the Badwater. It was a goal. You threw it out there. You wrote it down. We put it on paper. Fast forward, I get a phone call from you. You were selected to run the Badwater. You were like a chicken without a head. You were a runner. You were excited. So let's fast forward. You now got to train. So let's go from training to actually psychologically doing it, and let's discuss the pain points, because I'm very interested in the pain points. Like, what are you doing? What are you thinking when you want to quit?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, you want to quit every single time. Every single time. It could be a 5K where you have to push yourself all out and your heart rate is here and you're can't breathe. And you're like, why am I doing this? To a half marathon, a marathon, to, Badwater. So that moment comes at every time. It's all in your head. Like, it's not in your legs. It's not in anything. It's in your heart and it's in your head.
I want to ask you a question, because I have a lot of heart. My intentions are good. I wrote Heart of a Beast because I have a big heart. But because endurance running to me, psychologically, I hit a wall and I quit. I don't go past 3 miles. My knee hurts or this or that. It is brutal. And I need to understand how to get through that wall. What do you do?
Well, there's a couple things. You don't ever say, like, I'm going to go out and run 135 miles, right? You have to condition your body and you have to condition your mind. There's a lot of things I do. Training for Badwater is brutal. And I'll be honest, like, I was invited back for this year, which was postponed till next year. So it's still sitting in my mind like, I have to train for that again. And it's daunting. But the first and foremost is I take it and I break it down. So I never say, okay, I'm going to have to go out and I'm going to have 3 months of running 100 miles a week, every week for 3 months in a sauna suit, by the way, nonetheless.
Insanity.
No, it's insanity. And I always joke.
I mean, a good insanity. I love it.
I always joke around and say, like, May comes, it's time for Badwater. Well, so I get into Badwater, and Badwater is the world's toughest foot race. As we mentioned, 135 miles in Death Valley in the middle of July, and it's 125 degrees, and there's 20,000 feet of climbing. It's the pinnacle of ultra running, and 100 runners from around the world are invited every year. So I applied, and I figured I have to apply because I'm going to have to apply for like 5 years to get in. It's the pinnacle and, the Holy Grail, and people apply for years and years and years and don't get in. And there's all different reasons and things as to why people get in, and sort of that mindset of if they're going to be able to complete it. And I get in the first year. They do this whole live announcement of who's, in the Badwater field this year. And like, I heard my name and I was like, wait, what? And I called you after. Right. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, wait, what? I was like, did they say my name? Like, I really didn't believe it. And it was recorded, and I went back and I played it about 3 times, and I was like, oh my God, now I have to run this thing. Like, now I actually have to do it. So I think mentally, to get yourself there and to train, first you have to educate yourself. So there's something called Badwater University, and that's online, just a whole compilation of people who have run Badwater and all of their experiences and what gear they use and how they heat train and all of these things. So the first thing I did was arm myself with education. And I think that knowing what can happen and not being fearful of it, because I would then know what it is and how to handle it, that's what takes me there first. Second, okay, this is how I have to train. And I never set out for a run and say, all right, well, this is the first of, 40 runs I'm going to have to do to train for this. I only think about one run at a time. And even more than that, I break it down into pieces. If I have a 20-mile run to do, it's probably going to be 5 miles at one speed, 5 miles at another. Then I'm going to refuel 5 miles this way, that way. So you break it down, and I never think about, I just ran half a mile, 19 and a half left, because that would make you crazy, right? I take it in some sort of grouping, 5 miles at a time, 2 miles at a time, 3 miles at a time, whatever it is. When I'm racing an ultra, you have a crew that's following you. And I never think beyond the next time I'm going to see my crew. It might be at the Keys 100, which is, a very iconic ultra marathon. You start in Key Largo, and you run straight down Overseas Highway to the southernmost tip in Key West. It's 100 miles straight down. Middle of May, no cover, purely exposed, insane. Your crew can meet you at different points on the course. Sometimes it's 2 miles, sometimes it's 3 miles. The longest portion that you can go without seeing your crew is 7 miles on the 7-mile bridge. I never allow my mind to go past the next time I'm seeing my crew. I might say to myself, I'm running 2 miles. What do I need from my crew when I see them in 2 miles? What am I going to hand them back if I'm carrying something? I want to change out my Camelback. I have garbage from something I just ate, whatever it is. Thinking about my interaction with my crew, and I only allow myself to think about that segment at a time. So I'm never worrying about anything more than something that's 2 or 3 miles at a time. And that's how I mentally do it. And I say to myself, the longest I've ever run is 150 miles in one clip. And I say to myself, you've run 150 miles. All you have to do right now is run 3 miles, no big deal. And that's how I mentally handle it. You cannot start out on a 135-mile race and say 1 mile down, 134 to go. That will do you in. It has to be broken up into pieces and segments. And that's how I train too. When I train, I take blocks, and I train really hard and intensely for 3 weeks, and then the 4th week is like a rest week. So I sort of look forward to that rest week and think about, how great it's going to be. I'm going to sleep every day for a week, and and a rest week is shorter runs. It's not completely off, but I think about those things. You think about like the rewards that you're going to get when you're done. Grocery lists in my head. I sort of try to get other things done at the same time, so your training isn't just downtime. And if you can run with a friend, that makes it all the better. When I go out and do like really long training runs, whether it's like a 50-mile run or something, I try to arrange for friends.
Oh yeah, 50-mile run, no big deal.
But I'll arrange for friends to meet me, right? So I might run the first 10 miles by myself, and then I know like, hey, I'm going to be around here at 1 o'clock, and have a friend come and meet me and run 10 more miles with me. And then we talk and we chat, and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, I'm 30 miles in. I can handle the next 20 on my own. So I try to do things like that. Whether it's a race, a training run, no matter what, it's broken down into segments, and only think about it that way.
In the art of war, they say know thyself. If you know yourself, you lose no battles. You must know yourself pretty well.
Let me tell you, you've got to be really comfortable in your own head to stay there for 38 hours. That was what it took.
And you don't even use music. You don't even use...
I don't. When I train, every once in a while when I train, I do use music. Like if I'm going to go out for a long run by myself, I do use music. But when I race, I have a job to do, and the music distracts me.
Right.
When I ran Badwater 135 miles straight, it took me 33 hours, no music.
Okay, so let's get there right now. I mean, it's hot, right?
It's melt your shoes hot.
Melt your shoes hot.
3 pairs of shoes down.
3 pairs of shoes. And you had to have wanted to quit at some point, I'm assuming, or no?
So this is interesting. In every single race, as I said, I've ever run, I had a point where I was like, I want to quit. This is ridiculous, right? Like, who does this and why?
Right.
And I can tell you that when I was in Badwater, that was the one time in my life I made a promise to myself. And that promise to myself was this: being chosen as one of the 100 people from around the world. The year I ran, there were 21 countries represented. I said, I'm one of 100 people around this entire world who have been chosen for this honor. I'm not going to wish the experience away. And what I meant by that in my own head is that, like, when I run other races, I'm like, okay, get one more mile done. That's one more mile closer, one more mile closer. All right, I'll look at my watch and I'll say I have like X amount of hours left, whatever it may be. Every time an hour ticks off, I'm like, awesome. Now I get to have like a snack and hydration, and it's 1 hour down. And that's those segments that I break it down into. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to be in the moment and I was going to enjoy Badwater. It's in the craziest place on earth. Like, you look around and like not even a blade of grass can grow there. It's this uninhabited, unbelievable, like natural experience. There was intense pain, like intense pain. I kept reminding myself, don't wish this experience away, handle the pain. So the way I handled the pain would be I would tell my crew, and we had this whole box of like, just in case. The first climb that you make at Badwater is in this place called Town Pass, and it's at about mile 50. And you've now already run through the night because on top of everything, Badwater starts at 11 p.m. just to sort of mess with your clock and all of that. So now it's like you're 50 miles in, the sun is up, it's starting to burn you, and you have to make your first big climb. And not only do you have to make your first big climb, but like the way that you have to run, it's on a huge slant. My left leg was landing up and my right leg was landing down. And by the time I got to the top, my whole body was out of alignment and my ankle was killing me because it was sort of rolled the whole time. So I said to my crew, quickly hand me an ankle brace. We put an ankle brace on. We filled the ankle brace with ice and I kept going. And the ice would literally evaporate. It would just be gone. It was the weirdest, craziest thing because of that dry heat. But we kept shoving ice in it and putting an ankle brace on. And it's that component that I mentioned earlier, that education, like knowing, hey, I'm going to put on one of those tight ankle sleeves if my ankle hurts and fill it with ice. That way I'm icing my ankle, I'm giving it the support, and I'm moving forward. Handling those issues and dealing with those issues and knowing how to deal and knowing that whatever came up, you can't imagine the things that we packed. And like a successful race is when you come back and you've got like 90% of your stuff still in the car, right? Because you're packed for every eventuality. And knowing that gives you that peace of mind to get in it and go through it.
That's absolutely incredible. So what was that feeling like when you actually crossed the finish line and you're done? Like,
yeah,
I can't imagine what that feels like.
Yeah. So the crazy thing is, so like I said, it was 33 hours and 42 minutes. And the last 13 miles of the race is straight up Mount Whitney. So it finishes at the top of the mountain and it's about a 12% pitch straight up. So you're like climbing and you've been going for, by the time you get there, I was going for like 29 hours and now I have to climb this mountain. You're so uber focused that you almost like don't even realize that you like kind of have a headache from focusing for so long and everything. I saw the finish line and my crew said to me, they parked the vehicle. You're allowed to have one vehicle and 4 people follow you, and that's it. And the crew parked the car so they can cross the finish line with me because there's no way you can do this alone. So it's really, everybody crossing that finish line together. And they're like, we're going to park the car. There's your finish line. And you were winding around this mountain. So I couldn't see the finish line. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, where's the finish line? Where's the finish line? And I couldn't see it. And then I made one turn and then it was like 5 steps ahead of me. And I couldn't believe it. And I almost couldn't feel my legs anymore. And I just I'm going to start crying now. Just like thinking back on that moment. And I grabbed my crew's hands and like my husband was my crew chief. So he was next to me. Hector, who owns iRun, and my friend Mickey, who had been like my triathlete mentor from day one. My friend Harold, who I had met when Carrie and I did this 400-mile trek across the state of Florida. And we all held hands and crossed the line together. And I just started to cry. Like I just started to cry and cry and cry. And then I got it out. And then all of a sudden I had like all this energy again.
Amazing.
Like everyone's like, did you just fall asleep? I'm like, I couldn't sleep for hours.
High, runs high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. And you finished in the top, right? Like, weren't you?
I finished 4th, yeah.
That's insane. Including men and women, or just women?
It was 4th overall women, and I honestly don't know.
Okay, so
6th, 7th?
I'm a huge believer in role models. Is there someone in the running community that you look up to that you try to emulate, or is there?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of people. You know, one of the most incredible things about the ultra community, and goes back to sort of my whole story about Boston and everything that happens. The ultra world is a family, right? So you go to these events and yeah, we're all competitive and we want to win, but like you would never, ever like pass somebody who's down and not stop and say, what can I do? So right when we were going into that climb in Town Pass, there was a guy. His crew spoke some English. He didn't speak any English. He was throwing up. He was having a really hard time. And I was like, guys, we have papaya extract and ginger chews in the car. Go get them to his crew. And the crews are sharing stuff. You know, I was starting to fade right when we were coming out of Death Valley into Lone Pine, where you climb the mountain. And another crew had a whole thing of coffee in their car, and they gave it to us. The ultra community sort of, you know, brings everybody together. There's a woman, Allie Allen, and she was a local ultra runner, and she really inspired me. She was this incredible runner. She's been 1st overall at Badwater. She set world records. She's done amazing things. She's so pure. She would run with a bottle taped to her hand. She didn't need any fancy equipment. She would go out and run like 40 miles a day, 20 in the morning, 20 in the afternoon, just on her own. If she saw people along the road, she would run. I would be like, Allie, she lived in Miami for many years. She lives in Barbados now. And I would call her and say, Allie, are you running? Yeah, I'm always here. I'm always there. Anybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. When I got into Badwater, she was one of the first people I called, and I said, you know, can I have advice? She was so generous with her time and her advice. But more importantly, she was just so organic in it. It was never about, she was this incredible person who could have any sponsorship and any sort of whatever it could be, but she never cared about it. It was like pure just for the run. There's 2 race directors, Bob Becker. He runs the iconic Keys 100, and he's in his 70s, and he still wins overall ultra marathons. He's like a father figure to every ultra runner, and his races always have a charitable component. He's always giving back to his community. When I ran the 150 miles this summer to raise money for childhood cancer, Bob got up in the middle of the night just to run some miles with me. Because
let's touch on that childhood cancer project.
Yeah.
What is that, and where could people find it? Because I'd like to donate after the show.
Well,
I'm going to give $500.
Thank you. I just got chills. It's very generous. So,
I'd like to know where I can do that.
So the Childhood Cancer Project, and you can visit us at thechildhoodcancerproject.org, or you can always text the word develop to 44321. Another story of sort of a life-changing event. My very dear friend Joanna, her son in 2015, who had grown up with my oldest son, was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a very aggressive form of bone cancer. Cancer sort of came knocking on her door, but we all answered. And we have this amazing group of women who band together. The Childhood Cancer Project was formed. It is delivering hopes and cures by funding research. So, for example, we are funding a sarcoma trial at Sylvester Cancer Center with an amazing doctor, Dr. Trent. We gave them $150,000 last year. We fund legacy autopsies, which researchers say that one of the most important tools they can have is, unfortunately, after a child passes, access to their body to see where the tumors are, if they were connected to organs, not connected to organs, what veins they invaded. But so many families are financially ruined trying to keep their child alive that once they've passed, they have no resources left. And these autopsies cost about $10,000. So we fund legacy autopsies, and it gives parents who have lost their child a sense that their child didn't die in vain, and that their child's life is for a bigger reason. And when Josh was diagnosed with cancer and we all started doing our research to see how we could help, it was shocking to find out that less than 4%, we're now thankfully up to 5%, though, of NIH dollars go to childhood cancer. So less than 5% of cancer research dollars are going to find different treatments for our children. Children who are diagnosed today are receiving the same treatments that children who were diagnosed 40 years ago are receiving. And the treatments are toxic. So our goal is to find less toxic treatments and to increase funding and to make sure that no parent ever has to hear the words is that, I'm sorry, there's nothing more that we can do.
Yeah. Another thing that you're doing that's just, amazing. What is next? You said you might have the bad water. Where do you go from bad water? Like, I don't get it. What's after bad water? And then, like, when do you just hand the baton and now it's just watching your kids and training them? Like, is there another? Is there a next?
Well, the handing the baton thing is definitely sort of there. So my oldest son, Davis, ran the Miami Marathon last year, pushing Carrie. So he was 15 at the time, and he pushed Carrie in her wheelchair through the entire Miami Marathon. And I just sort of ran next to them and watched and made sure that they had what they needed, water, food, all of that. So that's incredible. I love coaching. I was, again, lucky enough to be accepted into the field of 100 for Badwater 2020, which due to the pandemic was postponed. So I decided, I had asked all these people, please sponsor my run. Like if I'm running 135 miles, I'll say, can you donate $135? And in the past 4 years, we've raised almost $300,000 for cancer research through my running. So I said, I can't let these kids down. And a lot of the kids who we work with through the Childhood Cancer Project, they like to follow my runs and they get involved and we go Facebook Live and talk to them.
So you're not giving this up yet?
So I'm not yet.
Yeah, no.
So when Badwater was canceled, I was like, well, I still have to do this run. I knew in my mind that I had to do it in Miami with the humidity. And the humidity is just killer. I think it takes it more out of you than the heat. But I decided since it was flat, and that statistics show that Badwater took me 33 hours and 42 minutes. Statistics show that in that time, about 150 kids worldwide would have been diagnosed with cancer. So I decided I had to run 150 miles for them. It was July 6th and 7th. I set out with an amazing crew of people to raise funds and run the 150 miles for childhood cancer. So I think that I'm always sort of finding a next and a new adventure. I'm excited to go back to Badwater and challenge myself in different ways, sort of knowing portions of the course that maybe I was a little too scared of, so I took them a bit more tentatively and pushed myself a little bit more there, see what I can eke out, see if I can raise more money, and sort of challenge myself in different ways that way.
Right, so this is the OG Money Podcast, and when you deal in your finances, I feel like investing is very, very personality-wise. And assuming that you are a long-distance runner, do you take a more buy and hold, diversified asset allocation, dollar-cost averaging strategy?
Yeah. I'm definitely less high-risk, long-term.
Right.
What's the long end?
Right. If we drop 25%, we're going to add. And okay, so that's definitely
sure.
That's definitely a good strategy.
Fits in within my sort of whole personality.
Right. It's your comfort zone. With that said, where can people find you? I know you're on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Yeah. You want to just give
come follow me and check out what's going on at Caryn Lubetsky on Instagram. It's Caryn Vogel Lubetsky on Facebook. My name is spelled with a C, so it's Caryn. And I need to get a little bit more back into Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's not so much for. I like Twitter for the finance Twitter, but
sure.
You mentioned something about the childhood cancer. If people want to get involved with that, where could they find that?
Visit us at thechildhoodcancerproject.org. You can see all of our amazing programs. You can get to know some of the kids and families that we're having an impact on. Read up on the doctors and programs that we invest all of our dollars to. Every dollar goes to research, and it's just all about research and finding less toxic treatments and a cure.
Last question. So You have a book, movie, or a Showtime, Netflix series you're watching right now. What's the first thing that pops in your head? Book, movie, or special on television? What are you recommending to me right now that I have to either read or watch?
Oh no, that's really bad because those are my guilty pleasures, and I watch some really fluffy stuff on Netflix. I'm embarrassed, but I'll say it. I loved Cobra Kai. That was so much fun.
You're the second person.
Really? Okay.
Pedro Valente mentioned Cobra Kai too.
Okay, I'm in good company.
Because I loved Karate Kid. Is it that good?
Yeah, there's something about that whole I don't know, you versus yourself type thing. Anyway, like you said, my days are really intense and busy, so I like to get in bed and just watch something mindless.
Okay.
But I do love documentaries too. I'm a female lawyer, RBG. I always sort of say, I wouldn't be me without RBG.
Right.
I've watched all of her documentaries and everything long before. I love CNN has a docuseries that doesn't have anything to do with their reporting, but they have a great series, and they've done a series on the Bush family, which is incredible and really eye-opening. They're really an incredible family and have done a lot that I think people don't realize. So I loved that series. That's on demand on CNN, on the CNN. I guess it's on Sling. I watch it.
Throw me a book.
Throw you a book? Okay, I just finished 1,000 White Women. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
Great book.
Well, as always, Caryn, you are a mind-blowing human being, and you're doing things that no one can do. Top, 0.01% of anyone can do that. So I enjoy my time with you, as always, and I think this is a great podcast we did together.
Well,
thank you for coming in.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the OG Money Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc., an SEC registered investment advisor. This site is published for residents of the United States and is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any security or product that may be referenced herein. Persons mentioned on this website may only offer services and transact business and/or respond to inquiries in states or jurisdictions in which they have been properly registered or are exempt from registration. Not all products and services referenced on this site are available in every state, jurisdiction, or from every person listed. Third-party comments may not be representative of all customer experiences.